Despite losing their entire running back room before the season even started, the Baltimore Ravens, and specifically Lamar Jackson, have been absolutely unbelievable this season. In this video, we're going to discuss what's been working so well for the Ravens and what we could expect to see in the future. So let's get into the video. I think after week 1, I don't think anyone really expected the Ravens to be sitting at 5-1 after their loss to the Raiders on the opening Monday Night Football game. People didn't think the Raiders were going to be as good as they were, and people were really unsure of what the Ravens were going to look like because their offense is designed so much about a run-heavy offense, and they literally had three running backs that went down with season-ending injuries before week 1 even happened. So people weren't really sure what to expect, and seeing the Raiders take the game in overtime 33-27, I think people realized that Lamar Jackson was able to play a game where he could kind of carry the team. I think a lot of people expected he could. It was more a matter if he was going to. And in that first game, he threw for 235 yards, touchdown, no picks, and then he ran the ball himself for 12 times for 86 yards. He did fumble the ball 3 times in that game, and he lost 2 of them. However, he was doing a lot for the team that game, and unfortunately the Ravens fell. But moving on from that game, he has played maybe the best football we've ever seen in the NFL, especially from a quarterback of his caliber. And by that I mean, I don't think we've ever seen a rushing quarterback that's as dominant as he is. Obviously, we had Mike Vick, and that's the closest comparison, but they're very different players. I think Lamar Jackson definitely looks to pass, which Michael Vick did, but Lamar Jackson's escapability, I don't even know if that's a word, but it feels right to say about him. He just could make things happen on the fly. I feel like when we watched Mike Vick play, he was definitely a player that was really good at getting out of the pocket when it collapsed, and then he could turn it into some yards, where Lamar Jackson, I feel like he's really developed in this season. We're really able to see him when the pocket's breaking down. He's able to escape, but he's keeping his eyes downfield, and he's making plays happen. It's been a joke ever since his first year when he took over for Joe Flacco halfway through the season. Everyone called him a running back because he really is talented at running the ball, and I feel like that's more of a threat than it is, a flaw. And he's definitely put the people to rest that say that he can't throw. I mean, he threw for 442 yards already this season in a single game. And as a passer, he's actually averaged the most yards per game in his career by almost 80 yards. 2019, his first year as the full-time starter, he threw the ball for 208.5 yards per game. That was his highest before this season, and obviously the season's not over, but right now through 6 weeks, he's averaged 281 yards per game, which is actually crazy for him. Just thinking about what kind of offense the Baltimore Ravens run and what kind of player Lamar Jackson is, you never really had to worry about him throwing the ball for 400 yards, and it only happened in one game so far, but even overall this season, he's only thrown for under 200 yards once, which was this past weekend when the Baltimore Ravens shocked the world, I think, and absolutely blew out the Los Angeles Chargers. It was a dominant game, and I think this is the game that 4-1 is obviously a great record, but you look at some of their wins, they struggled against Detroit, they struggled against a struggling Kansas City, they lost to the Raiders, and then they went to overtime against Indianapolis, when people thought Indy was a bad team. So you look at people, I think, were questioning the Ravens, credibility, but they've really proven the doubters wrong, and I think this week really helped them. But I mean, Lamar Jackson's been proving the doubters wrong his whole career, I feel like. But it's been a great season for him. I mean, we'll just go through his games. We already talked about the Raiders game, what his stat line was against Kansas City, which was an amazing game. Lamar Jackson went absolutely off in that second half. He really carried the Ravens over the Kansas City Chiefs. Lamar Jackson's been unbelievable. He's been the heart and soul of the team. The players rally around him, and rightfully so, because he's been unbelievable. Against Kansas City, he threw the ball 26 times for almost a 70% completion percentage. He had 239 yards. He did have 2 interceptions in that game. But then he also ran the ball 16 times for 107 yards with 2 rushing touchdowns, which is unbelievable. That's another thing that makes him special. Then against Detroit, that was a really rough game from the Ravens from a team standpoint. Lamar had probably his worst game. He only completed about 50% of his passes. He threw one TD to one pick. He was sacked 4 times, the most he's been sacked this season. And then he rushed the ball 7 times for 58 yards. So he's going to get his rushing yards. We know that. And then he also fumbled, but he recovered it. So not great, obviously, but it was his worst game, and the Ravens were able to win it on Justin Tucker's 66-yard field goal, which set an NFL record. It was awesome to watch. And then week 4 against a really, really talented Denver defense, the Baltimore Ravens blew them out again. It was 23-7. Lamar completed about 60% of his passes, threw for over 300 yards. He had 316. 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Rushed 7 times for only 28 yards, so the least rushing yards he's had in a game. But he really need to rush the ball. He didn't really need to put his body in that, situation. And then against Indianapolis, it was an exciting Monday night game. I feel like despite that being a close game, that was not a bad game from Lamar Jackson. He threw the ball 43 times, and he only had 6 incompletions. He had an 86% completion percentage. That's unreal. That's really, really, really good. And he threw 4 touchdowns to no picks. Rushed the ball 14 times for 62 yards, so he only averaged 4.43 yards per carry. And he did have a fumble, and he lost the fumble, so that was his only turnover of the game. However, if you throw the ball 43 times and you only have 6 incompletions and 4 touchdowns, that is a really good game. So I know that was a close game, but Lamar Jackson went absolutely off against the Indianapolis Colts. And the Indianapolis Colts, that strength of that team is their defense. And Lamar Jackson was able to just dominate and was able to squeeze out the victory there against the Indianapolis Colts on Monday Night Football in overtime. And then this past week, another dominant performance from the whole team all around. But Lamar Jackson, another good game. He had 19 completions, 27 attempts for a 70.37% completion percentage. He threw for only 167 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 picks. So not a great stat line overall there. And then he ran the ball for 8 times for 51 yards. But he didn't really need to play, like he did against the Colts the week before, because he was just getting the job done, and the team overall was getting the job done. I don't think we could put that as a blemish, because that was a dominant victory, 34-6, against a team that's really become a contender in most people's eyes this season in the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, the hardest thing for the Ravens is just the division that they're in, I would say. They're in the AFC North, which has the worst team in the division right now, currently being 3-3, and that record being tied for both the Browns and the Steelers. And the Bengals also in that division, sitting at 4-2. So even though the Ravens are 5-1, their lead in the division is not safe whatsoever. And I mean, most teams in 6 weeks in, their lead's not really safe. However, they're in a really tough division, and they haven't played any division games yet. So I think that's what we really have to look for. They start this week. They play against the Bengals, and I think the Bengals are a very talented team. But I usually go through in these videos, I go through the rest of the schedule and talk about what games are winnable, what games are easy wins. But I mean, let's be real. With Lamar Jackson as their quarterback right now, any game is winnable for the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, in week 2, they beat the Chiefs, who at that point were still considered, the best team in the league behind the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, maybe, who are the Super Bowl champions. But Lamar Jackson, when you have him, I think any game is winnable, so I don't want to go through every single game. The hardest thing is that they still do have the 6 division games. They play the Bengals this week. Their next division game, again, isn't even until November 28th, so they play the Browns then. And then they have 3 straight division games. They play the Browns on November 28th, the Steelers on December 5th, and then the Browns again on December 12th. So 3 weeks in a row they're playing against a division opponent. Then they have a break against the Packers, and not that that's a break, just a break from the division. And then they play the Bengals again on the 26th, day after Christmas. And then they finish off the season against the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. So, let's be honest, I really feel that it's going to be really tough for the Ravens still. I think they have a lot of challenges ahead, but starting off 5-1, when you played against teams such as the Raiders, who have been surprising, the Chiefs, the Broncos, who have been surprising, and even the Chargers, to start off 5-1, I think is really, really good for them. And I think it really has given Lamar Jackson a lot of confidence. Not that he really needed it anyway. I mean, he's already won an MVP so early on in his career. And right now, I personally think that Lamar Jackson is the MVP. I know some people are saying Kyler Murray, but MVP to me is the most valuable player. And with how many injuries the Baltimore Ravens have, they have the second most people on IR currently, only behind the Detroit Lions. And I think the Ravens have about 14 players on the IR. That's a lot of players. Just even if they're that's a lot of injuries, no matter what. And for a team to be 5-1 with 14 people on the IR is ridiculous. And I have to give a lot of that credit to Lamar Jackson. In games where it felt like they were down and out, Lamar Jackson's been able to carry them back in and play unbelievable. He's done it at least twice, where the game's solely been because of him, and those were against the Chiefs and the Colts, I would say. He just took over in those two games and looked absolutely unbelievable. And I'm not saying he didn't play well in the other games. I'm just saying those two games, I think if there was any different quarterback behind the Ravens' offensive line snapping the ball for them, I don't think they have a chance in those games. And that's just what makes Lamar Jackson special. I personally think he's the MVP. Let me know who you guys think is the MVP in the comments below. So far into the season, do you think it's Kyler? Do you think it's Lamar? Do you think it's somebody else? I'd love to see what you guys are saying. If you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It helps out the video so much you guys don't even understand. And have a great day.